overthinking is not just thinking too much. It is a quiet storm that lives inside the mind. It begins softly, like a small ripple on a lake, but quickly turns into a whirlpool that pulls a person deeper and deeper into their own thoughts. People who overthink everything rarely choose to do so. For many of them, it feels like their mind is constantly on guard, scanning life for danger, analyzing every word, every glance, every silence. And while from the outside they may seem calm, inside they carry a whole universe of unresolved questions, imagined scenarios, and conversations that never happened. At first, overthinking looks like a desire to do things right. A wish to avoid mistakes, misunderstandings, disappointments. But slowly it becomes something heavier. It becomes a habit of replaying the past as if it could be changed, and rehearsing the future as if it could be controlled. People who overthink often live in this fragile space between what was and what might be, rarely allowing themselves to rest in the simple moment of what is. It often starts in childhood, long before a person even knows the word anxiety. Maybe they were raised in an environment where mistakes had consequences, where love was conditional, or where approval had to be earned. Maybe they grew up in a home where conflict was unpredictable, and the safest thing one could do was anticipate every possible outcome. Children like that turn into adults who feel responsible for everything, even for things they cannot control. Their mind becomes their shield. Their thoughts become their armor. And overthinking, although painful, begins to feel familiar, even safe, because it gives them the illusion that if they just think hard enough, they can avoid pain. But the problem with overthinking is that it never stops with just one thought. A simple message that hasn't been answered turns into a story about rejection. A small mistake turns into a prediction of failure. A neutral look becomes evidence of disappointment. Overthinkers don't imagine good scenarios, their mind automatically goes to the worst ones. Not because they are negative people, but because their brain has been trained to prepare for danger before it arrives. They think they're protecting themselves. They don't realize they're exhausting themselves. And while they analyze everything, life quietly slips by. Moments that could have been enjoyed turn into puzzles that need to be solved. They scroll back through conversations, wondering if they said something wrong. They replay choices, wondering if they should have made a different one. They question their feelings, their instincts, their memories. Their inner voice, instead of being a supportive guide, becomes a restless critic that never sleeps. Yet people who overthink are often incredibly empathetic. They notice details others miss. They think about how their words affect others. They care deeply about not hurting anyone. Their sensitivity is a gift, but when turned inward, it becomes a burden. They rarely show how much they struggle, because they don't want to bother others. They think their thoughts are too much, so they learn to silently carry the weight alone. The truth is, overthinking is not a sign of weakness. It is often a sign of intelligence, creativity, emotional depth. These people can see possibilities that others overlook. They can imagine outcomes that others never consider. Their mind works fast, moves deeply, and feels intensely. But without balance, this depth becomes a maze. And the more they try to find the exit using logic alone, the more lost they become. Overthinkers often believe that if they can find the right answer, the anxiety will disappear. But the mind doesn't work that way. It simply replaces one question with another. It solves one worry only to create a new one. Overthinking isn't about finding answers, it's about trying to feel safe. And safety doesn't come from predicting life. It comes from learning to live even when things are uncertain. Some people overthink because they fear disappointment. Some fear abandonment. Some fear failure, judgment, loss, or conflict. But beneath all these fears lies one universal feeling, the fear of not being enough. Not good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not lovable enough. Overthinking becomes a way to outrun this fear, to stay one step ahead of pain. But ironically, it only creates more of it. And yet, despite everything, there is something beautiful about the way overthinkers move through the world. They reflect. They question. They care. They want to do things right, even when it costs them peace. If you look closely, people who overthink are often people with big hearts that have been hurt before. Their mind became their protector because someone else failed to be. Their thoughts became their safe place because their environment wasn't. Healing doesn't happen by forcing thoughts to disappear. Healing begins when a person realizes they don't have to solve everything. They don't have to earn rest. They don't have to anticipate every outcome. They don't have to carry the world alone. Sometimes, the most powerful thing an overthinker can do is let a thought pass without trying to fix it. To breathe and allow the moment to be just a moment. To trust themselves a little more each day. People who overthink may not always realize it, but they have acquired courage. The courage to keep trying, even when their mind is loud. The courage to care deeply, even when caring hurts. The courage to show up, even when their thoughts tell them they're not ready. Overthinking is not the end of their story. It is simply a chapter, one shaped by experiences, by survival, by sensitivity, but not the chapter they must stay in forever. And slowly, when they begin to notice that not every silence hides rejection, not every delay is a problem, not every mistake is a disaster, the world becomes softer. Life becomes lighter. The mind becomes quieter. And the person who once lived inside their thoughts begins to live inside their life again. Overthinking doesn't disappear in one day. But every day, the mind learns something new, that not everything needs an answer, not everything needs a meaning, and not everything needs to be controlled. Sometimes the most peaceful life begins when a person finally says to themselves, I can let this thought go. And in that moment, the storm inside begins to calm.